We might not actually have our second government shutdown of the year, according to bipartisan negotiators in Congress who say that they've got a possible deal. But we're gonna break down both the details of the deal and what different groups think about it. So here's a little bit of what's in it. A Democratic congressional aide told the Daily News that the committee had agreed to do $1.375 billion for the construction of 55 miles of bollard fencing. No wall, said the aide, while reducing the number of detention beds at the disposal of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency by 17.4%, cutting about 8,500 beds out there. So we've got a little bit more details. Those are the initial details. There will be some bollard fencing, not a wall, fencing. So basically it's like, imagine open space and you're walking across it. And then you come to material that stops you from crossing it, but not a wall.
Yes, they went with bollard fencing at the last second. They were considering dotard fencing instead, but a little bit too much of a Kim Jong-un reference, so they went with bollard. I literally don't know what bollard fencing is.
So bollard fencing is the steel slats that are put relatively close to each other. You can see through portions of it, but it is metal for enough that you can't walk through it.
Okay, so they will not be able to squeeze through with their cantaloupe caps.
No, it's bollard fencing is just a fancy wall. That's all it is, fancy wall.
Yeah. Now we're kidding around. That's cantaloupe caps, a reference to Steve King and his racist diatribes against Latin American immigrants. But look, it looks like a good deal to me, and I don't often say that. Usually, these so-called bipartisan deals are disastrous, and I'm usually on the side of saying, no, strike a better deal, or from time to time, it is okay to shut the government down. But in this case, it appears that the Democrats had leverage and actually used it, which is borderline shocking, and that Trump is coming out, and the Republicans are coming out in a much worse shape. So you're never gonna get everything you want out of a deal. From what I can tell now, not all the details are in, but it looks like I would take it. So he wanted $1.6 billion, or the original deal that Trump rejected had $1.6 billion for some sort of border security, physical barrier of border security. This has less. So he negotiated himself into a worse position than the already bad position that was so bad he rejected it.
Part of the deal.
There you go. Told you, can't negotiate his way out of a paper bag, and doesn't know anything about deal making, and of course bungled this because he's a serial bungler.
Let's go to the president. He's going to respond to a very close analysis of this plan, which I'm sure he conducted. And here he is giving his first impression.
Will you sign Congress's border deal?
I have to study it. I'm not happy about it. It's not doing the trick, but I'm adding things to it. And when you add whatever I have to add, it's all gonna happen where we're gonna build a beautiful, big, strong wall that's not gonna let criminals and traffickers and drug dealers and drugs into our country. So I can tell you that, am I happy at first glance? I just got to see it. The answer is no, I'm not. I'm not happy.
Was that before or after Sean Hannity told him not to be happy about it, calling it a garbage compromise?
This would be after. Yeah, what I noticed, I guess I notice this every day, but when he's going through, I'm not happy about it, I have to study it, so he doesn't know the details, but he's not happy with what he sees. And but once I add things, there's gonna be a wall, like that whole weird meandering statement. There's a lot that's been normalized since he's become president, but I still have not gotten used to an idiot like that speaking with the authority of the office of the presidency. Yeah. So we do have that. Now, he doesn't support the plan, but might well end up signing it in the end. The thing from my point of view, and maybe my expectations are too high, I don't know why they agreed to a deal that has any wall in it. I know that they're saying it's not a wall, Sean Hannity's saying it's not a wall, but it feels to me like he kept switching back and forth between I want a wall, I want steel bollard fencing, I want a barrier, I want concrete, I want a wall, I want fencing.
Yeah.
I feel like he is going to use this to declare that he has won and that Democrats have signed on to the idea that you do need physical barriers at the border.
Now, this is bizarre world where I will now defend Democratic leadership and their compromises.
Okay, maybe I'm crazy.
Yeah, no, you're not crazy. It's a legitimate point of view, and some progressives in Congress might have that point of view, and some people are concerned about that. But look, they do have to compromise at some point and get to a deal because the government has to function. And the question is, how good or bad is that deal? Not whether it exists or doesn't exist. So if the Democrats stuck to no funding for any physical barrier at the border at all, well, we obviously would never have a deal. So then how do you ever resolve that?
Would we not have a deal?
Yeah,
I mean, how
think
much
so.
do the Republicans want to launch back into a shutdown just a few weeks after a shutdown that was absolutely devastating for them?
I know, but at that point, and that was part of the point of this 3-week hiatus to kind of renegotiate, the Republicans would be able to say, hey, we did a reset. It's no longer a Trump shutdown. The Democrats are now saying they're going to give zero when they had offered 1.6 billion before. This is totally unreasonable, and they would then launch that PR campaign. If I was on the Democratic side, I would think that this is a plenty good enough win where we actually got Trump to reduce what he was asking for from the original shutdown, which is a massive loss for Trump. I mean, that makes him look like an idiot. So here's a situation where I mean, this is total bizarre world where I agree with Sean Hannity. If you're a Republican and Donald Trump and you really wanted the wall, this is a garbage compromise for them. They got killed, and that's because Trump doesn't know how to negotiate. He's a total idiot. So look, you got to take it at some point. I think there's a good point to take it, it's all symbolism anyway. The real wall takes $20 to $70 billion. What difference does it make if it's 0 or 1.3 or 1.6? It ain't getting built. And what difference does it make if it's a dollared wall or a dotted wall or a beaded
wall
or a beaded curtain, as Nancy Pelosi once called it? It's all symbolism. And if we're talking about symbolism and you're not actually building a nonsensical $70 billion wall, I'm okay with it, as long as you got something back, and they did get plenty of things back. And look, the compromise on the beds that and hence the detention facilities that ICE has, I don't love that either. But that's the whole point of a compromise. And look, why was I against so many compromises that the Democrats did for the last 20 years? Because they weren't real compromises. They just give the Republicans 98% of what they wanted. So I hated that, and I fought against it tooth and nail every single day. But if you have an actual compromise where both sides win a little bit, and actually, honestly, our side wins more, that's a compromise I can live with.
I feel like the Republicans will say that every Democrat that votes for this has voted to build walls. And they will use that the next time around and say, well, how are you guys gonna say that we shouldn't spend $10 billion when you guys did approve $1 billion for a wall?
But I'm gonna use the Ben Mankiewicz rule on that one. Yes, they will say that, and then we get to say whatever we want to say, right? We get to counter them. And so the reality also, and John, you know this, is that the Schumer and the Democrats offered, what was it, 25 billion?
Initially, yeah.
Initially last year, right? And Trump turned that down, because again, total idiot, doesn't know how to negotiate. So you could use that argument if you're a Republican anyway.
I do want to play one more little bit of video of Trump though, because I think that it could be interpreted either to support what you were saying or my narrative more. So he's gonna be talking about if there is another shutdown, whose responsibility is it? And take a look at the way that he frames that.
I don't think you're going to see a shutdown. I wouldn't want to go to it now. If you did have it, it's a Democrat's fault. And I accepted the first one, and I'm proud of what we've accomplished, because people learned during that shutdown all about the problems coming in from the southern border. I've always accepted it. But this one, I would never accept if it happens, but I don't think it's gonna happen. But this would be totally on the Democrats, okay?
Okay.
See,
so I think
that's exactly what I just said.
Yes, that they would try to pin it on the Democrats, but it also is an indication that he really doesn't want it on him, because he just went through this experience of it being on him, his approval rating dragging, and whether, like, I guess I'll flip what you just said to me. Okay, the Republicans will try to claim that it's the Democrats' fault, but okay, they were kind of trying to do that in the second half of the last shutdown.
But the problem is they would have a point here, because we got Trump to reduce the funding for the physical barrier at the border.
But they were saying, before the shutdown was even done, Chuck and Nancy were saying not $1 for a wall. That's what they won the shutdown battle on, was no wall funding.
Yeah. Look, I love it, brother. I mean, I hope that there are more and more progressives on the left of me saying, no, let's fight even harder. That would be awesome. I'm just telling you that the old adage that you saw if you watched Moneyball, the movie, at the end of the movie, you got to know when you hit a home run. Okay, it's okay. We hit a home run. Let's take our winnings off the table. And finally, I'll end on Donald Trump and whether he'll even accept it. Now, the Republican legislators say that they have been in constant communication with the White House and that the White House signed off on everything that they negotiated. When they asked Richard Shelby, who's the lead negotiator on the Senate side for the Republicans, so will Trump accept this? He said he couldn't predict what Trump will, quote, do, say, or write. In other words, look, we asked the idiot 7,000 times and he said yes, but that doesn't mean it's a yes. God knows what he'll tweet tomorrow, because he's unpredictable and a child.
Well, and by the way, for Richard Shelby, I don't know if he might be implying this in the tweet, but if he's not, he should be thinking about it. There's every reason to believe that he will accept the deal because he did sign off on everything, but he is going to viciously attack the Republicans who negotiated it. So they're going to work hardcore to save his ass, and they're going to get thrown under the bus.
To which I say, of course, of course they are. That's what he does.
Oh, those idiots.
The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.